एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो. चलो ये कर लेते हैं. दिस कुड बी अ ग्रेट इंट्रो.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
Hi, I'm Rishabh, founder of the Ayurveda Experience.
Imagine basing your business on the Ayurvedic traditions of India. Imagine working out of India but selling in the US market. Imagine selling in a space without any large established competitors. Transformative Learning Solutions checks all these boxes. It's a company that hit a turnover of 70 crores last year, selling Ayurvedic products and training courses largely to the West. And Rishabh Chopra, the founder of Transformative, has had a roller coaster journey full of highs and lows, starting with leading the student run prestigious Isaac body in India to making multiple failed attempts in business before finally finding success in the US market with Ayurveda.
So, was college like a transformational experience for you, or was it like just nothing special?
So I went to College of Business Studies, in Delhi. It's a well-reputed college now, and I studied finance. But the most transformational part of my college was I was a part of ISEC, which I don't know whether you've heard of, but it's a
Yeah, I have.
yeah, so it's a very large youth organization across the world, 100 plus countries. And I joined as a volunteer in college. And then I used to head the Delhi chapter, which we are about 70, 80 people. I think ISEC is a life changing experience for anybody who does that. Many well reputed alumni of ISEC. And it's a first real training or entrepreneurship for me as well, because basically the organization is global, but every local chapter runs itself. So you have an election, you become a president of a local chapter, you hire your team, and your team has their teams, and a city usually has 50 to 100 people, maybe even larger now, but in my time about 50 to 100 people in a local chapter. So I ran the local chapter here, and then I ran the national chapter out of Bombay, and we had 2,000 people in India at that time, and I think already we were in around 15 cities at that time. And so it was Mr. Adi Godrej had given us a part of his office to work out of. Him and Mr. Tata for a long time were sponsors of ISEC.
Okay.
So, running the national office was very interesting.
So you took that up after college, or this was while studying that you were running this national office?
So, the local office while I was studying, while I was in college, you're a volunteer, you work on the side, you work without getting paid, but you run an organization. And the national office is full time. I mean, it's full time. I mean, even back then, you manage, I think, over $1 million annual budget, and you're 21 and 21 or 22. And at 21, I think I was about 21 when I ran the national office, or 22. We used to have board meetings with Adi Godre, Nandan Nilikani, Deepak Parekh, huge names. Nana Lal Kadwai, I think she used to run HSBC, probably still does. Chairman of McKinsey. I mean, to be at 21 or 22 running board meetings with these people all in one room is a transformative experience, right? And also the entire country is run by you. You are like the decision maker on an organization with 2,000 people at that early age. And it didn't end there. So then I went to the global office where I ran one third of it, all external partnerships of it. And that global office again manages, or is the central body for 100 plus countries. So I traveled to 28 countries in that one year. So I was in a new country practically every 10 days, just, doing the external partnerships of that organization. So the core work of ISEC is youth and talent development. And a big part of that is they do cross-border traineeships. They send people from one country to another country to work in an NGO or a corporate organization. And that it thought was a very significant way for somebody to change their worldview and get another cultural experience and a professional experience. And if it happened early enough in your life, it was transformative to you. So, for example, I've never met him, but Arun Puri of, I think, the is it the India Today group? It's India Today group, right? You know, we had tracked back. He, for example, had gone on a traineeship to Japan in his early years.
Okay. Becoming president of the country or running one third of the global organization, how did that happen?
Uh, well, when I hear the autobiographies, of a lot of great people, they talk a lot about luck. I believe a little bit of luck, and not much, and not much about luck. I believe a lot about working hard and getting something done. So I think the thing is that, and one of the things I must credit my parents for, is in leadership roles, diversity of experience matters more in many ways than really focus specific skills. So no, you need to be able to execute some things and have some skills, but you also need to be able to communicate. You also need to be able to understand diverse perspectives. And while a lot of that learning came from ISEC, but winning elections, sort of to win elections, you have to do the whole election drama, for which you have to sort of articulation matters. And so debating, for example, in school would have helped, or dramatics would have helped. And our parents, to both me and my sister, they never restricted us from diverse opportunities. They were never like, just study like hell, but don't experience all these other things. And in hindsight, I think that does help. Even today, when sometimes you'll see somebody who's really talented. In fact, I think a lot of the talent today gets overvalued or undervalued by the quality of the communication. And sometimes you'll find great talent which is undervalued because the quality of communication is just not that good. And you'll have some other talent overvalued just because quality of communication is much better. So I think it's those diverse experiences helped. Of course, you have to be fully committed to it.
And what did your parents feel about you taking this up as a career? This was like a career only, I guess, right? I mean, you were getting a salary and there was a growth path.
Well, it is sort of a career stepping stone, but it's hardly a salary. I mean, by salary, by first 2 years at Bombay was 7,500 rupees. Okay, so it is really you're doing not for profit. And then when I shifted to it is a not for profit, I said. And then when I shifted to the Netherlands, my salary was below 1,000 euros a month. I keep trying to tell that to everybody who, all the young guys nowadays who are all about more salary, more salary, more salary. I tell them till 27, I made less than 25,000 rupees a month. And so it wasn't about salary. It was about professional growth and the opportunity to have these great experiences. And again, I have to thank my parents for that. I think because a lot of parents would say no, right? They'd say, go get your particular certain pedigree job with a certain financial outcome. They've never stopped me. Even after business school, they've never pressurized in that way. Even after business school, I went straight to start this startup. I never went to a job, and they've never stopped me.
So, which year did you finish College of Business Studies?
In 2005,
Okay. So, and then you spent, I think, 3 years in ISEC. So, 5 to 8, you were in ISEC.
right? In eight, I
Okay.
retired from ISEC.
So, why did you retire to like take up a real job? Like, was that the like a better paying job, or what was the plan
No,
then?
I just I retired as a global head of external relations. The only thing else to do at ISEC was to be the global president. I didn't apply for it. I didn't do that for many reasons. I won't go into that micro, but mostly because I thought the job I already had was very market focused. So you went to market and got rejected a lot, which I thought was very good for your ego. And the global presidential role, of course, very tough role to get. But again, you stand in an election. Is more like a policy maker. So the global office of ISEC is like the UN, right? So think about it as like a UN Secretary General, and I didn't sort of feel like I wanted to do that. So I left. And then I ultimately came back, took a supposed to be a 60-day break, but in 50 I couldn't tolerate it. And I went to help my parents for a while. But in 3 months of that, I advised them to close their business, and they did close it. It was only a crore rupee business. It was in textile. It didn't have big margins. The debt costs were too high. It wasn't going to scale. So I literally in 3 months, and maybe I was too immature then also, didn't realize what even getting to a crore rupees means. But I said, you should just shut this and all of that. And ultimately they shut it and I went to Malaysia. So I went to Malaysia to do an ISEC traineeship, which is, actually the kind of traineeship that ISEC facilitates, that you go work in a company or startup or NGO. And in Malaysia, I went to a company called Mind Valley, which sold personal development video courses in the US from Malaysia. So company is still around, now quite a far more sizable company. But I went to the startup days, worked out of a house, and I was there about 6 odd months. I do have to give it credit for, giving me the first exposure to running an internet business and to running a cross-border business. Where you from one country sell in another country through the internet. And yeah, so I was in Mind Valley for 6 7 months, and then I went to business school at ISB. But
What was your role exactly over there?
so I essentially managed affiliates, which means that I think most people in the internet world would know what affiliates are, but you get other people to promote your products for a commission. And at the end of my time at Mind Valley, I was beginning to look at a particular early education product, which is basically it's a homeschooling product made by an institute in Philadelphia called the Doman. It's called the Doman Method. I think the institute was called the Institute for Achievement of Human Potential, and they had these products about how to teach a baby to read, usually but before the age of 2. So I was very interested in it. So I was beginning to manage that product, but left soon after.
Okay. So why did you decide to do an MBA?
So why I decided to do an MBA was a friend of mine sent me a book, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur already. Well, the one thing I didn't mention was between ISEC and that time that I spent some time with my parents' small business, I also tried to pitch VCs for another business of my own and failed. Right? Maybe it's so far back in memory, and I don't even remember. But I sent a couple of emails to a couple of VCs, sort of again an ed tech kind of idea, but totally like a paper idea. Why decided to do an MBA? So this entrepreneurship bug.
Tell me more about this. Like, what was the idea, and did you actually get to speak to any VC, or it was just like you sent some emails and nobody replied?
So what was the idea? Well, the idea was that effectively to provide free educational management software to all universities. And so that would, have the incentive for the universities to use that software. And then, include because all the students would be signed up on that software, basically that would be a source to have all the database of students and effectively sell that on the front end like one of the job portal businesses. So you got the back end because of the solution you offered the colleges and the schools, and you got the front end which was monetizable by talent acquisition costs, etc. You could think the front end would be like a Naukri.com or a Jobs Ahead or one of those. But we had sort of the supply side problem would be solved in a different way.
And did you actually talk to VCs, or it was just some emails and nobody replied and you gave up?
So it's true. When I talked to a lot of some of the alumni of this organization I was with, and I suddenly realized that business is very different from being a part of a sizable not-for-profit. When you do your own thing for the first time, you could have been anything in a large entity, and people sort of don't credit that so much as now you're a person doing business by yourself. So a lot of the alumni reached out. I did not get any positive sort of help. And then VCs, I wrote to many of them. I actually remember getting a reply from Axel Partners just saying, when you have traction, let us know, of a cold email. So I guess that's not bad. So yeah, but I think I must have wrote to several VCs, but I only remember this one strong reply in my head.
So then you decide you want to get a formal management education and you go to ISP. So what was that experience like?
No, I go to Malaysia, and I think also relies from this experience that this whole thing about raising of millions of dollars on a piece of paper is really not happening. And I think even today it doesn't happen. It might now what I see is on a piece of paper you can raise a couple of crore in angel money at some very lucrative valuation, but still raising big VC money or without traction doesn't happen. So after that I went to Malaysia, and then somebody sent me a book. One of these books, I forget the name, where I think Rashmi Bansal's book talking about how all Make My Trip and Info Edge and all of these guys came from IMA MBAs. So, sort of like, oh, there's no way to make it to a significant business in this country without doing a good MBA. So I thought let's try the ISB route, and that happened. So for Malaysia, I went. Actually, for Malaysia, I 3-4 months before I went to ISB, and Transformative was started in those 3-4 months actually before I went to ISB, the current business I run in, which owns the Ayurveda experience. So while at ISB, I was already running this business and another vertical of this business.
So I assume that would have been the edtech part of your business.
Yeah, so so post Malaysia, now we're talking about post Malaysia, there was two businesses. One from Malaysia, that early education product. A lady who was my boss at that time, she said, why don't you take this to India? So I was doing that, and if that's of interest, I can talk about it. It was a massive entrepreneurial learning. And well, yeah. So I mean, won't take names, but so the Mindwell is a good, credible company. But they had for a moment of time engaged this American lady who was running a vertical, and she said, you go to India, you run India, you take 50% of that business. I'll invest $15,000 in it, and it makes me realize how silly I was back then to give 50% of a business for $15,000. And but I thought they are giving the product, so product is a sizable thing. And I spent a good 6 or 7 months getting that product into stores, etc. And we had some very credible stores signed up, and nothing would ever move. I had actually a friend of mine move back from Singapore to become CEO of that business while I go to ISB. And 6 or 7 months in, I went to ISB, and he stopped receiving salaries. And even though we had all these stores signed up, we could never get a response from the owner of the license in the US. So between my ISB term, I actually flew to the US to those guys and say, what's going on? We have all these stores signed up in India. Why aren't you giving us the product? Why aren't you giving us a license to sell this set of products? They were all early education products. Teach your baby to read, teach your baby to do math, teach your baby to swim, all of that. And well recognized. It sold more than 5 million copies in the US. And I went, so in the middle of ISB, I take 15 days off, convince my professor that I'm going to go do this and she shouldn't fail me. I actually go there and I walk into Philadelphia to this guy's office, and they say, "What are you talking about?" And they had no idea. So in effect, that lady had no licenses, and this was a massive learning, right? And until today in my firm, we are quite crazy about paperwork, contracts, written agreements, all these things. We look at these things with significant granularity. I think it probably comes from that experience, you know and this was with foreigners. It's not even, some people think that there are higher grounds in foreign countries. There's nothing like that, right? It's about they're good people, and I would say not so good people in all countries. And it's big, but big business experience. You should document everything, documented well. So that business went. Of course, that was the end of that business. And it also makes you feel the responsibility you have for other people you engage. I had a friend leave a $60,000 job in Singapore to come and run this in India, and he stopped getting paid. He didn't have a job. I paid him a couple of lakhs for borrowing from somebody else, but then I couldn't pay him any further, and he also had to leave. So
As
that
in, you took on personal debt
yeah,
to
I
pay
took
him.
I took a personal debt from another friend of mine who I was close to while I was in Europe, and
And you also had debt for ISB? Like ISB was a student loan, or?
I also had debt for ISB. Yeah, and I don't think of debt very well. My parents had a very bad time with debt in their lives, so I don't think of debt in I don't enjoy debt. I've given up. I've been offered pretty sizable venture debt and all, and I don't take it easily. But yeah, I had ISP debt and that debt, which was only a couple of lakhs, but when you have zero in the bank, a couple of lakhs is a lot. So that business went to the fold. So that was only one business. Maybe by that time life I'd already figured out that I was saying dependency is death. So not to be dependent. And so I had a second business which I had made the first sales of before I went to ISB, and that was basically with a professor of Delhi University who had written books on mythology. We had made video courses about learnings from mythology, the philosophical learnings from mythology, and we started selling those.
And what was like the quality of video? Was it like a animation video or like
No,
one man speaking or what?
it was mostly one man speaking. That we bought some very cheap animation, but it made the video look terrible. I think for a while we had it, but then we removed it. But it was only one. It was only one man speaking for the first video.
And why would people pay for this? I mean, internet is like, in those days, especially, internet meant free videos, free information, stuff like that.
Well, that we think about, and I when I first went to Mind Valley, I thought about this is crazy. So much video is free. But Mind Valley even then used to sell $10 million a year, 10 million US dollars a year of video. Okay, on personal confidence, meditation, self help, anything you can think in the self help space they used to sell. So I knew people paid for video by being at Mind Valley. Okay, then it was about the product and about the uniqueness of the product. Now the thing here was we were telling people to buy mythology video, right? And videos from professor on mythology. And anyways, this wasn't like a you should have hope video. This was a really an academic professor, and we wanted to bring it to very crisp ideas of powerful ideas from mythology, which I believe there are many, right? There's so many great ideas in our mythology.
Something like what Devdutt Patnaik also does.
Absolutely, I would say so. I've not read a lot of his stuff. Maybe I've read one odd, but something like he does, I think, is a good broad definition of it.
Right. He also has a podcast. Very few episodes, long time back, but yeah.
So we sold those, and even before I went to ISB, and while at ISB, I continued to sell them.
And and how much money was that making for you?
Oh, well, it's tough to say that far back, but I don't. I mean, it wasn't making any money. I think in the first year, half of which was while I was at ISB, maybe I lost 50,000 or 1 lakh, and maybe it made 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. I don't remember. So nothing great. And even that, I think 30, 40,000 I ended up borrowing from another friend in the US. A lot of friends I have to pay back. But so it wasn't making a lot of
And
money, but
and this, how were you selling it? Like people would pay money and then they would be able to log in and go behind a paywall and watch it online, or people could pay and download it, and or was it like on a CD or like
so we
how
were
were you selling?
selling both online and on CDs. And ISB incubated that, and they put in a couple of lakhs into that business, gave me a place to stay, gave me an office. And that was our business till about 2014. We basically published many things in philosophy and mythology, and in its final stages, maybe it did 100 grand a year. So still wasn't doing anything insane.
100 grand INR?
Not dollars.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So by its end, it was doing $100,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe touched a crore. I don't remember now. Uh, till about 14, but we would have burnt out. We were going to fall off the cliff. And I had raised post ISB between 70 and 100 grand. I think almost 100 grand. No, I think closer to $70,000. Yeah.
So during your one year and a few months at ISB, you were focused more on building up this business, and ISB incubated you and also put in some money. And so once you got done with the degree, you continued to sit out of campus and do it, or what was? I mean, what was that incubation program like?
Yeah, so both businesses while at ISB, one burnt out, one continued. ISB incubated, then stayed on ISB campus for a year. Amazing campus, of course, in Hyderabad, an amazing experience. The best part of the experience was, you stay with other incubatees, and all of them are some of our, you know, we're all very close friends. In fact, we just had one of our reunion calls last week. Everybody starting their own business, almost everybody a single founder, and I thought that was pretty amazing because we sort of were like co-founders to each other, even though we were not in each other's businesses. And till this date, all of us have a very special bond and talk to each other all the time. And I trouble all of them all the time. So, even this morning. So it was on campus. We didn't get honestly much intellectual support from ISB. Maybe we had to seek it out more or something, but it wasn't like proactively coming. But the having a good infrastructure to work was very useful. I mean, just the fact that we had a good room to live in and a good office to work in. Good as in simple but functional, fully functional, and in a campus that we could really, of course, these also I think are issues. These things slow people down.
Didn't have to worry about cooking and anything like that.
I mean, yeah, you can go to the cafe or you have a maid come, all of those things happen. So I think the biggest value was good environment and being able to work with the other entrepreneurs and have each other, through all the up days or down days. I remember at the end of my incubation, there was a 70 or $80,000 term sheet that somebody gave me. Of course, for one of the first times I was looking at a term sheet, and very very complex term sheet, right? The usual 50 clauses, and I've tried to negotiate, like remember, I think 30 or 34 of them. So they, so they pulled out the deal. They walked out of the deal. They said, no negotiation. Immediately they said, we're walking out of this deal. So I said, I was almost like part suicidal, I think. And in that kind of moment, the camaraderie of the fellow entrepreneurs.
Okay. So once your ISP degree was done and you were scaling up the business inside the campus, so did you hire people there? What was the plan? Were you like creating more content and then spending money on PPC campaigns to get people to your website? I mean, what were you doing?
Okay, so I think ISB we got 3-4 lakh bucks or something. I don't know, something like that. So there wasn't a lot of extra money. I think through that whole year, maybe a couple of extra lakhs might have been raised from somewhere, but nothing extra. So we were just doing the content and doing very little PPC. But I think the lesser the money, the better you become at PPC. So today my firm prides itself as being very good at PPC. But so very little PPC, but just like thinking of the product, doing more video, understanding the customer, etc. Trying to raise money, trying to raise further money because we had proven that it makes some money. I think by the mid of ISB, must have made 5-10 lakhs by then. As you see, when you make 5-10 lakhs by pure internet sale on your own website to global customers, there's always something to look at. You have to look deeper, but if you are selling to people you don't know randomly over the internet, there's always the chance of it being a massive business. So then and of course, but the burn rates are usually higher just because you're marginal. I mean, you're not making any extra cash because of low scale. So I think it's just about getting a couple of more videos and courses done and trying to raise money. And then at the end of ISB, or a couple of months after that, I think we finally managed to raise close to 100 grand. And then we burnt it. so, so I think that was the first. Maybe that's the next phase to go into. You got that money, you're like, oh, what do we do with 70 lakh rupees? Never seen 70 lakhs in my life. Oh, now I remember clearly it was 68 lakhs. So what do you do with this? Oh, what does everybody else in the internet do it? You try to grow fast. So so we try to just scale fast with PPC, and you dream of some LTV or lifetime value, and you bump up your revenue and you feel very good about it. And I remember, I think between 6 months, somebody invested at a 3-4 crore valuation, and somebody else invested at an 8 crore valuation, and or 6 or 7-8 crore valuation, and but he invested only 8 lakhs, right? So actually, that is no change in valuation. But you, at your early stage, you think, oh, now I have, you still fool yourself to think that, oh, now you made $1 million company, which is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. So we did that for a couple of years, though. I mean, the boat kept going along. I think it dragged till 2014.
And when did you move to Gurgaon
I
from
moved to Gurgaon
Hyderabad?
only 1 year back. We moved to Delhi. I moved to Delhi in 2012, right after Hyderabad. Yeah, so that business dragged on till about 2014, where we were really running out of money for sure. And somebody who had bought 4 or 5 of those courses on mythology and philosophy, I called her up. I said, a lot of people don't buy this stuff. Why do you buy it? And you buy every course. So she said, I love Indology and I love philosophy. And why don't you do a course with me on Ayurveda? And we did a course with her on Ayurveda, and I think everything changed after that, because that course did very well. There was a introductory course on Ayurveda. I think less than $100, and I think over the years we sold almost $1 million of that course. But in its first 2 years, we sold maybe a couple of 100,000 of that. And then we just dumped everything else and looked at the Ayurveda market and realized this market is really a much better place to be, with a lot of global opportunity, a lot of digital opportunity, no large digital global player. And we sort of just totally shifted to the Ayurveda market.
Okay. So you are, yeah, I mean, now into physical products also, in addition to the online videos and courses. So how did you decide to make the switch into physical products from just an online product?
So, I mean, in about 16 or 17, once we had some traction in Ayurvedic courses and say, okay, now we're going to be in Ayurveda business. So, in courses, we were continuing to have some success, but obviously we need to find other ways to scale up.
Who were the people buying these courses? Were they like practitioners or consultants, or just like normal consumers looking to improve their health?
Normal consumers. I mean, we've always tried to build our courses for normal consumers, but they are accredited in some countries for practitioners to get credits, right? And we try to build for normal consumer because that's where the scale is, etc. Ayurveda in foreign countries doesn't have large enough practitioners to easily build an education-based business around them. It's growing, but it's more limited. Yeah, so they were normal consumers who, think, oh, so yoga, of course, was a big trend in the US, right? I mean, yoga was almost a 28 to $30 billion market. Uh, one out of one out of every, at the max, 20 Americans had some deep interaction with yoga, or fairly significant interaction with yoga. And so we thought, okay, what's next? And I think that's why I became more and more convinced about the Ayurveda idea. Plus, traditional Chinese medicine, alternative medicine in the US had always been big. They had been 50 to $80 billion markets. So we became very convinced of the Ayurveda idea. And then we thought, okay, so we're going to build the consumer base through education. And we'll monetize through having this marketplace on other people's products. So first we started the marketplace on other people's products. So we thought, who's going to build product? Product has its complications and all of that. When we started doing that, we just realized that none of the brands in the US were big enough. So, why wouldn't we just build our own brands? And that way we'll have the full leeway. So that was another significant shift after becoming a marketplace, selling third-party products. Then we realized also how many successful marketplaces in the world have been created outside of the very big ones from a product standpoint. Very limited, right? So then we sort of very quickly, in a year or so, moved from marketplace to into wanting to do products. But what we started doing was product partnerships with other people. So there was sort of two kinds of partnerships. There was a couple which was promoting a spa tool, and we sort of gave them a royalty because every time they did video for that spa tool, that did quite well, and we sort of gave them a royalty to you know become the face of that sort of tool. It was like a body massage tool made of copper and wood, and it was not commonly seen, etc. It was, you could rarely find it. It wasn't a popular product, so we gave them a small royalty, and then we really pushed that tool. Ultimately, we sold $8 million of that tool over 3 or 4 years, and you can see on Google Trends, so sort of it only rises once we get into that market of. So then it became clear to us, okay, so we're not going to be a marketplace. We're going to try to back these lesser known things which don't have too much competition. And ultimately, it also became about trying to protect the products that we build. So, for example, this tool I'm talking about, it's called the Kansa wand. Now it's quite a popular beauty product in the US. In fact, after this Oscars, the aesthetician of I think the woman who won Best Actress, she actually said that the Kansa wand is one of her beauty tools, right? So now it's that popular. But at every stage has been a learning. Even though we built that tool up, because we didn't trademark it, because we couldn't trademark it, because we didn't create the moats around it to protect it for the long term, people started selling it much cheaper than us on Amazon. and ultimately we lost that market. We didn't lose it. We still own, I think, 60 or 70% of the market is still us, but the profitability went away, and we used to sell at much higher prices, and the prices came down several fold. Uh, so that was one. The other thing was that we said that okay, let's try to. There must be small businesses, and like this couple who was doing this spa tool, you know, they had no way to build this into something that sold in the millions. But they had the idea and they had the training around it. So we said this is a good way. Let's find people who have got these interesting ideas and concepts and products, and let's partner with them. And we know digital very well. And I missed in some part of this, some part in the middle for survival. We ran a digital agency also, right? Just for a couple, 1 or 2 years, we ran a digital agency. We consulted some very well-known educational players, including ISB, Jamboree, the GMAT guys, and Ashoka University. They were all our clients. So we understood digital well. So we said, okay, we will bring the digital, they will bring the product, and we'll scale. But we must have a part of the pie. So we found a company in Wisconsin, USA called Ajara, which used to do $100,000 a year. And we sort of suggested a partnership to the promoter, saying for every $500,000 we sell, we'll take 10% of the company. So we'll help you grow, and we'll get part of that growth. And I'm very grateful to her. Her name is Nicole, and she agreed to that. And we did that, and we ended up owning half the company. And just last week, we actually bought the rest of the company. So now we fully own Ajara. But I think the key learning is, bring your strengths together. She had product, we had digital, and so we partnered with her to, build Ajara. And then the end of that year, which is 2017, we launched our own skincare brand called Ayura, which has been a phenomenal growth story since 2017. But Ayura was totally built by us, brand is built by us, and we sort of contract manufactured with very reliable partners. Uh, and Ayura, just in 2.5 years, has more than 200,000 customers in foreign countries. Uh, and so then we realized that we can just build brands by doing good diligence, contract manufacturing, etc. Uh, and do that. So I don't know whether I skipped skipped some things, but now I've covered a couple of the things in Ayurveda. So the shift, and also I have to say, a little bit of uh, the team as it begins to come together also adds value to that. So I don't really consume much of anything except for I think food and a lot of juice, or I'm not one to think a lot about consumption. So my understanding of retail sometimes was weak earlier. Now it's a little better because of naturally having to research it. So many members of our team, including Venu, who's now my wife, and we worked together for 7 years. So Venu is quite loves skincare, and she's like, well, let's do all this skincare. And so we started doing the skincare stuff. And and Raghav and Maginder, also two partners who joined me 6-7 years back. I think they also wanted to do the e-commerce side. So we partnered with some supplement companies. So it's a team also, right? My better mind has always been about transformation, transformative education, you know, that kind of stuff. So even in Ayurveda, I find my solace in trying to make the products effective. Trying to focus on okay, can we make this more scientific? Can we actually produce the best product and make sure this product is not just a skincare product, but is actually an effective product?
So, how much did you do turnover wise, like this financial year which has just ended?
So the GMV basis would have done just less than 70 crore.
Okay. What does that mean when you say GMV basis?
I mean, in our case, GMV is almost it is net sales. The only reason I use GMV that I like to be very accurate is because last financial year we didn't own a lot of Ajara. So half of Ajara was not counted as our revenue. Right. So the financials will show about 64 odd crore. But including Ajara, because now we own it, would have been close to 69 crore. And GMV is equal to revenue in our case.
So why the US market? Why not the India market? Was it because your videos were selling in the US and therefore everything you did was aimed at that market, or?
Yeah, I think it's just that. The one big learning from Warren Buffett is, stay in your circle of competence. I've been on the US market for 10 years. So even now we have opened European markets, are looking at Indian markets. But the US, Australia, and Canada, we've always done for 10 years. And so we really analyze that market, understand that market, and solve the problems of that specific market, right? So that was one. Just education was there, so naturally the customer was there. So we tried this there. Second thing was competitive. Competition wise, it made sense, right? Because India is a very competitive Ayurvedic market. So you need wide open spaces to run, especially if you want to consume very little capital. Uh, I mean, Transformative has raised significant capital, but that its direct usage of capital in its build in the business has been very limited. So I think if if you have a non-competitive space, and in the US you can of course do work on dollar values, etc., and you have high dollar values, so the spread is much larger, your capital burn is much lower, and so we sort of always stayed on that market. Now we are looking at India and all as well. We are evaluating that.
So you raised, you told me about $100,000, like when you were running the training and the video business. So after that, did you raise further money?
Yeah, I mean, in all, people have invested almost 45 crores in Transformative. We haven't done so too much media in the past, but in primary and secondary capital, now almost 20 odd crores has been secondary capital, that is, people buying shares from each other and not into the business. About 26 crores is in the business. In about 2016, we raised about a 4 crore angel round through Let's Venture, but led by Mohit Satyananda, who was chairman of the firm which runs the Jaipur Literature Festival, and he was on the board of the company which owned Cracks for a long time. So Mohit has been a great mentor to us over all these years, and is even now on a weekly basis we bother him and he guides us. So we raised a 4 crore back then under his mentorship, and he stays deeply involved, and we're very grateful for that. And then in 2018 uh, end, we raised money from Fireside and Centrum, and both Kanwal, I guess in media known as Kanwaljit Singh, and Giri from Centrum are on our board, and they both invested there. So that was about a 35 crore round, and but 15 crore was secondary. So in primary capital, we've only till today sort of used 26 crores, and we haven't used it. A lot of that, at least a significant part of that capital, lies with us till today.
Okay. Yeah, so why did you raise that money?
Well, one, I think we were 7 8 years in, right, by 2018. So we were 7 8 years in, and my thing is that I think you should always have money. One, to weather storms. Nothing is It's not easy to weather all the battles now. In this environment, you could need it for any kind of cost which starts to fluctuate significantly. The second thing is, I want to look at Transformative like a research institution, that we invest in research primarily in Ayurvedic product, but also in technology, also in, even we think of customer acquisition as a science, so a lot of research around that. And so for some of these things, you need capital to play out models for a longer period of time. Plus, when you have capital, right, uh, the thing is that you can think longer term. Otherwise, a lot of it you are, just trying to manage cash flow all the time. And if you're trying to manage cash flow all the time, then taking really big long-term decisions is a little bit hindered. Can be significantly hindered also.
And how did you go about raising money? Like the first experience you had of going to VCs was not a good one. Then the next experience, I guess your ISB connects would have helped you for that angel round which you did around that time, around 11, 12. This time around, like, you went to bigger name VC. So how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, actually, the 11, 12, one was an ISB friend who gave half his salary as an investment, but there was also a couple of school friends, who made significant investments. And one of my childhood friends and his father, Kabir and Ajay Kochar, they invested a significant amount. I, I told them many times that if this blows up, there's no way I can give it back to you. But luckily, they trusted me and made that investment. And I think one of the things we're happy is that in these last rounds that we did, a lot of people have got their returns also, right? So in our second phase, I feel very uh, lighter that all the early investors have received significant exits. Um, so then I raised in 2016, which was, of course, a lot with Mohit's help, but we raised on Let's Venture because a lot of the VCs still didn't get it. I mean, I got one VC offer which I thought was lowballing the valuation, with all due respect, um, but mostly uh, and all sort of strange angel terms. I mean, you see every sort of strange angel term in this country, including I must be allowed to sell my share before you can raise the next amount of capital. I actually have seen that term. I think now it's not much better, but even till before 2015 or 14, it was tougher. Now I'm sometimes blown away at the valuations I see. you know, and I look at some Indian deals myself now, but I'm a little blown away. So I thought this Let's Venture kind of platform was phenomenal because this gave you the chance to really pitch to many people. Everybody wrote a small check, and you got a lot of people with very valuable experience from business. And and some of them have become real advisors and friends, and some of them are parts of funds even larger than VC funds, like PE funds, etc. So they're very astute investors, and yeah, so I raised through Let's Venture after trying all the private routes. But in Let's Venture also, this was earlier parts of Let's Venture. I really reached out to everybody with personalized messages, you know. And also, I think and to close a fundraise, you have to put scarcity in the end. I think this ends up being something that you have to give some timeline, otherwise it can keep hanging. I think from the time we put the deadline that we are going to close, I think the last 40% of the round closed in 4 or 5 days. And before that, it was just dragging. Also, the other thing about investing, a lot of it is you have to get the momentum going. You have to have many people interested at the same time. And that's when you can really, get more people interested and get the tempo going. So fundraising is a big exercise. And after 2016 and even before, I think some point I came to realize that focus on the business, not on fundraising, because ultimately people only want to fund a good business, and you don't get rewarded just for fundraising. And anyways, even if you raise funds but you had such a deficient business, the liquidation preference will mean that you are not left with anything. So post that, I've really been business focused. If I got an easy introduction somewhere or something, then I've always taken that opportunity and spoken to the VCs and given it my best, given all the information, try to make it work. I mean, at my general sense, I try to make all deals work. I mean, if they seem like of value, I try to make them work. But I wasn't like, I almost never go into full fundraising mode. Because to start a fundraise and to end a fundraise, your numbers have to be doing very well. I don't think you can easily do both. You can't show the upward curve and do the fundraise. It's not easy. I know some people might do it. So in 2018, then of course you got introductions to Fireside and Central.
Through
And
your angels.
through angels, and had somebody reach out. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think we don't find it tough to get introductions anywhere. We have a decent sized PNL by by an Indian startup standards. Uh, Once you start to reach to this level, people at least want to talk to you for 10 minutes. But getting the intros is not a problem usually.
Okay. So, how was that? How did you end up marrying Venu, who used to work with you? What was that whole story like?
Oh, okay. Well, uh, Venu came 7 years back as a, she wanted to join just as an intern, uh, because she was a vocalist and is a very good singer. And if you YouTube her, you'll find many great songs from her under Venu Banot, Vhanot. And she blames me for spoiling her singing career. But so she, came to join for an internship for a month or so and said, I'm going to Bombay to do film. Then I sort of tried to convince her to stay. And we worked together for all these years. A couple of years in, I think, we had, of course, a lot of people say from the very beginning we knew this was going to happen. But a couple of years in, after we had gone through so many tough, complex startup situations together. I mean, so when she joined, we were about 4 people or 5 people. Okay, so she joined almost in 2013. And we have been through all these really complex situations and of startup life and mental struggles and all the other kinds of struggles. So I guess you build camaraderie, you build that trust, and of course, I think everybody at Transformative knows we pride ourselves on creative. If you see the quality of our packaging, our websites, etc., and that all comes out of Venu's creativity, which was of course existent from the time that she was a singer, um, and manifests itself into skincare ideas, products, and packaging and education now. So, a couple of years in, we started dating. Then we lived together for several years, uh, even before we got married, because I think we are big proponents of testing everything. And and
Product market fit.
a product market fit. This is a complex one. Who's the product and who's the market? So, um, but I think the biggest thing is you have to. So we only got married 7 8 months back, and people say anything changed. I said no. I said what could have changed? What does marriage do? You have a deep emotional tie-in, and then in some sense, brutally put, you have some financial tie-in. And we had both before. We sort of were emotionally tied in. We were sort of financially tied in. We had lived together. Uh, we had gone through every sort of complex situation. So and survived. So it was high confidence interval that it should work. And I'm very grateful, of course, for her support over all these years.
So, what are you currently attempting to learn as an entrepreneur? And I mean, in my experience, entrepreneurs are like perpetual learning machines. They're always looking to learn. So, what is it that you're personally attempting to learn at this stage of life?
Well, I'm always trying to learn many things, but I think at this stage, my primary sort of problem I try to deal with is how to maintain and accelerate quality of product and effectivity of product while scaling at the same time. Uh, I've tried to answer that question, whether that's even easily possible. But to balance that, that's one. I think the second thing is about, uh, clearly I have no more hours in the day I can work. So, uh, how do you pass down this entrepreneurial energy to, whatever number of people you have, uh, hopefully hundreds of people? How do you pass down that energy and uh, that vision, passion, all of that, that everybody functions at that pace? Because without that, unless you want to just burn capital, there's no way to grow fast and create a great company. And if you do that, I think the need for capital in many businesses can be far more limited. Um, so yeah, those are two sort of perpetual problems. effectivity and scaling and lifting, the sort of output of every single employee. And I don't even like to use the word employee. I like to often I try to think of transform it as a partnership with senior partners and junior partners, but everybody as partners. And if I try to take inspiration from the best finance firms, right? They use very few people to manage very large sums of money, or the best law firms, right? They're structured as partnerships. And I believe a lot of the internet business is a lot of the time people try to replace knowledge with capital, or they use capital to buy knowledge. But I think you structure it well as a partnership where everybody has significant upside. You know, because of the upside should be an automatic sort of compensation for the knowledge, and try to retain all the best knowledge inside a company. Um, so try to build this partnership or build a structure for a good internet partnership or internet business partnership is something I'm always trying to think about.
So that was Rishabh sharing his secrets of how he scaled up Transformative. And if you want to know more about their products, then do visit theayurvedaexperience.com. If you like the Founder Thesis podcast, then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.
This was an HT Smartcast original.
HT Smartcast.
Log on to htsmartcast.com to listen to more such podcasts.